Hey everybody, welcome back to Conspiracy Theories and Chill. Today we're going to explore the conspiracy that history as we know it may be fake, that a whole civilization may be being hidden from us. Hundreds or even thousands of years might have been omitted or changed in the history books. Could this be true? We know that we are deceived on a massive scale, but do we really understand how massive? What if certain buildings and structures are actually much older than we are being told? Well, today on Conspiracy Theories and Chill, we have a special guest, independent researcher Tyler Klattenhoff, and we're going to go deep into the subject of Tartaria and fake history. Please remember to like and share and subscribe to follow more great content from this channel. You can also support our shows by becoming a supporter of Conspiracy Theories and Chill on Patreon using the link in the description. But for now, let's get right into the episode. I'm really excited to get started. All right, so on the phone, we have independent researcher Tyler Klattenhoff. Tyler's been doing a great deal of research on Tartaria, missing and outright fake history, and more, and is here today to explain this conspiracy to us in greater detail. Thanks for coming on Conspiracy Theories and Chill today, Tyler.
Yeah, sounds great. So the
So,
whole thing is called Tartaria, but no one really knows what it is. Pretty much we have come to the realization that, especially in America, all of these state capitol buildings and many, if not most, old cathedrals were already here, and the history is just completely fake. And yeah, there's a couple places that really comes apart, and I'm excited to talk about that.
right on. Now, you can't see this, but on the screen, I have a slideshow going, and I have a bunch of old buildings and capitol buildings and cathedrals and that type of thing, so that there's a visual for the viewers as they're watching it.
Nice.
Yeah, like right now,
Yeah, really, you just have to look at the pictures.
right. So, help me explain here. What you're saying is that some of these structures, that the history is left out, and they were built way before we're being told they were built.
Yeah, we're inheritors of it in the nation, not founders, essentially.
So, what are you basing that on, if I could ask?
So the official story for, and I like to focus on American history because I feel like that's where the story comes apart most clearly.
Uh-huh.
Because there's a lot of out of place buildings in Europe too, but they have this long old history. Where in America, like we're told that Christopher Columbus landed, like 1492 he landed or whatever, and then from there that then all this stuff was built. But when you look, certain places it really comes apart. One of my favorite examples is Washington D.C. There's a sandstone. I tried to explain this on Robert's show, and I'll try better here. So all of D.C. It shares one sandstone under masonry. There's like tunnels through sandstone, and it's all connected. And we're told that, for example, like the Washington Monument and like the state capitol building, like the Capitol building, we're told that was built in 8 years, 100 years before electricity. Like that giant marble dome. It's like, I think the official story is it's like I wish I could look it up. It's like something like 70 tons of cast iron. And we're told settlers with wagons, and it's just the whole story of history just completely crumbles apart with the slightest scrutiny, to be honest.
No, I'm not
See,
an
it crumbles apart.
engineer. I'm not an engineer or a Freemason,
Yeah, sorry.
but to make one of those domes, is that put up there in one piece? Do you know?
Just the fact, you know what, I don't know, but just the fact that settlers with wagons could get that many. I'm gonna look it up quick. I really think it's like 70 tons or something crazy. I'm gonna set the phone down for 2 seconds and Google one thing. I'll try not to do this too much, but
Okay.
that particular dome. Give me 1 second.
Well, while you're doing that, I had a question written down to ask you about Washington, D.C. Have you ever looked into the layout itself of Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, and that in and of itself is another way the story crumbles apart.
Right. So we'll
It's
definitely
that
touch on that
that
more. because I think the layout of Washington, D.C., it lays out on these ley lines and power lines, and it's all geometrically laid out. It's very suspicious, always has been to me.
Yeah, it seems that the city grid, where all the streets are, especially in DC, it seems that was all already here too, and that's why these towns are where they are, is because they just found the roads already there.
Yeah,
And
and
it was a
DC
lot
is
easier to
littered
just
with
build
so
what
many
there
of those
already
older
was.
structures. But there are places in
And
DC,
DC is
there's,
just one example.
go ahead.
And DC is just one example. If you look, there's just so many examples. Another good one besides Washington, D.C. is if you look at the San Francisco Gold Rush, if you look at some old pictures of that,
Yeah,
like the very first photos that are ever of San Francisco and any of that are like already just these completely built up towns. And we're told that these settlers with wagons got their pickaxes and that they got there and then just built all these, these cities.
right.
It's just like these were miners. There's no way.
No, I'm trying to
No way.
imagine it in my head right now how they would do that with such primitive technology because just to hoist that stuff and to get it up there and to pull it with horses, and it just doesn't make any sense, especially like you said, in 8 years they say they built the Washington Capitol. That sounds ridiculous. Because I know I,
Marble and sandstone. And they say for all of it, they say that it's like cast with marble and that it's really just bricks under there and just a marble casing. But I don't know about that either. I think it's pretty marble looking. When it breaks, it looks like it's marble on the inside too.
right. And these structures do look foreign. I did a candlelight vigil at the Capitol building in my state, and it does. It looks foreign. It does. It looks out of place. It looks like it doesn't belong around everything else.
Yeah, and it's all under our noses our whole lives since little kids. We just accept they're like founding fathers were inspired by the Romans, and that's why they got all this Greco-Roman stuff.
Right.
And we was kind of accepted as little kids, but it just there's no way that this was built by our people. It's just I'm sorry, no one will ever convince me.
Yeah, and that's interesting
Especially
that
when
you
you
brought
compare
up.
it to like modern.
It's weird to me also that all these Roman inspired architecture show up all over the world. Now, is Tartaria, was it a civilization that is thought to have covered the whole world?
It appears so. It appears, and like I said, and I kind of try to get away from even Tartaria, that word, because we don't know what it is. The old
Right,
world does
right.
definitely seem to cover the whole world. There's those Greco-Roman out of place stuff everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
all over the world, and yeah, they as if they were built by one people, and
Right.
yeah, it seems all over the world.
Especially like obelisks. You'll see obelisks everywhere. In any place of power along ley lines, you'll find these obelisks. Washington, D.C. included.
I don't know. I feel like those had to have been for something else. Those obelisks. I don't think you would just do that for just as a symbol of power or whatever. I think those are for something else. I'm not sure what.
Well, yeah, but they're definitely tied into some structure or some laid out with these power ley lines that these elite believe in, that these geometrical ley lines hold power. But something else that I've seen in a,
Apparently, birds can see it.
birds can see what?
Apparently, birds can see ley lines,
Oh, really?
and which is weird.
Have you seen those Aztec drawings? I believe they're Aztec in the rocks that when you look at them from above, they form images, but you could not have possibly known that, drawing it. They don't understand how they made these
Yeah,
images. There's a lot of fascinating stuff in history that they can't explain.
yeah, and it's funny because they'll never like admit like, well, maybe we're completely wrong of history entirely. They're just like, oh, that's an out of place artifact. Just kind of skim over it
Do you
without
think
even thinking that
do you
maybe that
think that
exposes
it's
that they're completely wrong about other stuff too.
right? And also, do you think that do you think that they're just filling in the blanks so that it sounds good and they can fill up the book and it sounds like they know what they're talking about? Or do you think there's a nefarious plan behind it that they're hiding information from us intentionally?
I think it's a bit of both. I think it started with some people hiding some stuff, and now it's just gone on so long that even like the professionals have to just, make stuff up and fill in the blanks because they can't admit at this point that history could be this fake their whole life. Like that would be so embarrassing that, all these buildings are already here, obviously. It's embarrassing.
Now, this is where
Very close.
scientism comes into it a little bit because that would require that people feel like they can't question certain things. Uh, this would be one of the things that you'd have to feel like you can't question because any scientist, we're just regular guys, and a lot of this doesn't make sense to us. So you have to wonder why hasn't there been research done? I saw there was a guy, an Egyptologist, that did a bunch of studies and has found that the pyramids and the Sphinx are probably 10,000 years older than we're being told. And that ties into what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Now, he said
it's
with this,
all so much different than we were told.
it is very. And that's why I didn't understand. I listened to the episode of Right to Reason where you were on with the two English professors, and I thought it was ridiculous that they were just so dismissive because you can't deny these things. That what I just mentioned, that Egyptologist, that's famous. That's mainstream science, and that's accepted. That the pyramid and the Sphinx might be up to 10,000 years older than we're being told. Well, that's a lot of missing time. So why were they laughing? Why were they being so dismissive? That confused me. It seemed to me more that they were triggered, that they were being defensive of an ingrained belief.
Yeah, because they know that they wasn't built by settlers with wagons too. Deep down, they can't admit it, but you have to know that there's no way that was built by settlers with wagons.
Yeah, and they couldn't explain
Yeah,
anything
they
that
were
you were
triggered.
saying. They couldn't explain how it was done. They just said that you were being ridiculous. And I thought that was very off-putting and made them seem like they couldn't support their stance.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. I wasn't expecting it to be so offensive. Or
Because I
yeah,
like
that was an interesting interview.
it was. And I'm not fully on board with this, but I am open to the possibility just because it's a fact.
Power off.
You still there?
You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. My speaker died. I was trying to um I'll get us back on track. I was trying to make it sound a little better by having it boosted by a speaker. Is there still a delay?
Oh no worries. I haven't really heard too much of a delay at all, to be honest.
All right. Well, we'll continue on. I hate that the speaker died on me because I wanted it to be a little louder. I'll try to fix that in post too. Um, but what I was getting to with talking about that interview that you were on was why do you think people get so triggered by things like that?
People get triggered.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't understand why though people that consider themselves to be intellectuals would find such difficulty having a conversation about, like I said, something where there are holes. There are admitted mainstream accepted science where they accept that there are holes. And why would they think it's weird that, you know, I guess it's the possibility they're not open to the possibility that people would lie to them like that.
And that everyone could be there could be something so colossal right under everyone's nose, and that everyone's just retarded or something. That's a big one too. Like, wait, are you saying that everyone is wrong, but one random guy is right? Really? Yeah, it is. It sounds crazy a bit if you don't think about it, but that
Right.
and they did some renovations too. Um, I'll send you the pictures, and hopefully you can find them too. They did some renovations of the DC Capitol buildings. I think it was 2012, where they dug up like
You can see some of the under masonry better, and it's just mind-boggling. It's just one. Yeah, I mean, it's just so obvious. It's kind of. It's like one of the best examples of hidden in plain sight. It's just so obviously not what we're told. It's so obvious that it's like painful. You can't even really see it.
Right. I have a map of Washington, D.C. on my wall, actually, because I'm so fascinated with it. It is wild the way it's laid out. There's an owl in it, there's different geometrical shapes. Everything is on angles. It's very weird. It's very odd. It always has been odd to me.
And we're told settlers with wagons did all that.
That's crazy to me. You've been to Washington, D.C., haven't you? Have you ever
I have
been?
not. I would love to go. I've never been to Washington, D.C. personally. And
That is
I've seen a lot of
where,
pictures. I'm very fascinated too.
yeah, that's where my curiosity came from because I went there on a family vacation as a teenager and I was blown away by it. Like I said, these buildings have always looked alien to me. They look like they don't belong.
They're so out of place. I agree.
They are. So one question I had written down for you and get your idea on this. How much time do you think might be missing from history, from what we're told?
No, it kind of seems like exactly 1,000 years that they took. So a lot of people have been finding a lot of really old stuff instead of like 19, like instead of saying like 19, like year 1652, it's like a J. It kind of seems that they just threw on an extra letter,
Right.
and yeah, there seems to be 1,000 fake years of history.
Isn't that crazy? But the guy that I
Yeah,
was talking about, I don't know if you've seen this, you might want to look it up. But he did studies on the rain, the water damage on the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids, and due to his studies, he found that they're up to 10,000 years older than we're being told.
that would not surprise me at all.
And he talked about all of the obstacles that he had run into while conducting his research. And I think that it's ridiculous that, especially in the age of deceit, but in any world, that you would think you can't question something. To me, that's unscientific.
Yeah, remember we're told that science is a method of inquiry and all that, but then it turns out it's like a gatekeeper of inquiry.
Well, it becomes a religion. They can't question anything. There's certain beliefs that just can't be questioned. Like people always challenge conspiracy people and they say, well, it'd be really hard to hide. Well, it really wouldn't because people tend to hide things for themselves that they don't want to believe.
Yeah, right?
We're in the age of information and there's still people that refuse to inform themselves. So there's plenty of evidence that humans will ignore things and definitely will just accept what they're told. We're in mass, we're like sheep.
Yeah, that's always been a funny thought experiment. Whenever I start to get too crazy and thinking about crazy things, like the wildest crazy conspiracies, it's
Hmm.
like, if it were to be true, is this what I would expect?
What haven't we covered? We didn't cover the mud flood at all. I've seen that you share a lot of stuff on the mud flood. What can you tell me about that? That's something I'm interested in learning about as well.
It appears there was some sort of cataclysm, probably around 1800, and I wish I could remember the name of the effect, but yeah, sometimes it just rock just turns to mud, and buildings just like sink in their foundations. It's crazy.
So it wasn't due to
And
any
there's a
kind of a
lot of
flooding. It was due to the rocks turning to mud.
yeah, it's like a weird effect that happens,
Now there's
and
something else that I've seen that you've talked about where you talk about comparing these structures that don't make any sense to your mind when you look at them. These old churches and things, and then these crystals. Do you think that these stones are living?
Yeah, that's another thing. So the New Earth channel, that's a very good one, and she's pretty big on the whole living stone things. And there's a lot of research and a lot of reasons to suspect that they grew a lot of these structures around a crude frame, and that was they didn't cut and haul the stone; they grew it. So I'm not sure about that, but it's very interesting because it would sure explain a lot.
Yeah, and just playing with it in theory, it does explain a lot. If they were able, because why close yourself off to the possibility that people had figured out things that you don't understand? Because Tesla understood the world around us is mostly energy. Maybe they figured out ways to harness and control that.
Yeah, who knows?
But then,
It's interesting because no, sorry, go ahead.
that brings us back to what I was saying about whether or not it's nefarious or not, whether or not that the history is missing because it's omitted and they just don't know, so they filled in the blanks, or is it because they want to hide something from us, some greater power, something like that?
I think that there's just a couple just very sick, evil people that rule the world, and everyone else is just brainwashed. And they're just so brainwashed they can't even really see it.
I would agree with that. It's a handful of people that rule the world. It, you could fit them in a
Yeah, and
room.
they're really sick in the head.
You could fit them in a room, and they all have names and addresses, and they get away with it every day. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's tragic because we do know their names.
Mm-hmm. And in a way, we're allowing it. And to
Yeah,
not,
it's sad.
it is, to not question things like missing history when it's proven that there is missing history. I think it's beyond proven. You may not want to go as far as buildings were grown. That might be too crazy for you. But was that any crazier than the aliens built the pyramids? I hear that talked about all the time. And now people are ready to storm Area 51, and alien disclosure is getting closer and closer, and the government's even starting to admit things like UFOs. Sometimes a crazy idea is only crazy because you haven't perceived a reality where it exists yet.
Yeah, the eyes can't see what the mind isn't able to understand for sure.
Yeah, and people are closed off to it. And but then like I'm saying with the alien thing, there was a time when if you mentioned that, you people would have thought you were crazy. But now it's more of an accepted theory. And I'm just saying that that's the way that things go. It takes time for people to accept things.
Indeed. So one more thing before I forget. Another way you can see the whole history is fake, especially in America, is the World's Fairs. Do you know anything about the World's Fairs?
Not a whole lot. Tell me what you're talking about with the World's Fairs.
So they were like not that many, probably like five-ish, but they just erected these ridiculous cities. The White City.
Yeah, they had one
That's
here in
how.
St. Louis.
Yeah, and they tell us that these were like fake buildings. They just like put wood frame up and then put something over it, and they were all cheap and fake.
Uh-huh.
And two things about that. One, even if that's all they did, that still is ridiculous. If you look at those World's Fairs, just the fact that they would build that. Like nowadays, we use tents when we make for
Right.
they have carnivals that use tents. And so just the fact that they would build that at all, and they tell us though that it's all fake and just not real buildings, but there are still some that stand, especially in the Chicago World's Fair,
Really.
and you can see that they're like actual buildings of stone, and it just without any pictures to show. Hopefully, you can put these on the screen on this time. Just type in World's Fairs and just see some of it. It's just the most mind-boggling stuff you'll ever see.
But
Yes, I just wanted to make sure I got that out too, because that's a whole crazy. That's an entire new body of evidence that history's fake.
Yeah, I knew that they did go all out and crazy with the World's Fair, but now I'm definitely going to, right after this, go through and see all the pictures I can find to find what you're talking about, because I never questioned that. There is a structure from the 1903, I think, World's Fair they had here in St. Louis, and they still have it at the zoo, but it's an iron structure but it's this massive birdhouse that you walk through. And I don't even know how they transported it, but unless they built the zoo around it.
Yeah, they may have.
Yeah, you know. But we covered the questions on my list, but I want to make sure that you get out what you're trying to say about, and make sure it was clear, because I can always edit up what we talked about later, and but I know I got everything out I wanted to ask you, everything I was curious about. But is there anything else that you thought we should get into?
I kind of talk a little bit more about the mud floods.
Yeah, because I'm
So
interested in that, because I sidetracked you and you were talking about how the buildings actually dissolved.
the ground, the ground turns. It's like sometimes in earthquakes, instead of just the ground splitting, the foundation sinks. It's like
Right.
the mud. It's like a mud slide, kind of. It seems that happens, and buildings can sink.
That is
And
crazy.
yeah, there's a video by Conspiracies Are Us. He's a decent researcher. I'm a fan, but he made a video just about that oblation or whatever it's called, where I'm starting to get that feel that hear the delay now. That's weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, he made a whole video about that oblation. I can't remember the name of the effect, but yeah, just and examples of just cars on roads just sinking into the concrete. It just yeah,
I've
just
seen that
I've
with
never seen anything like it.
the earth opening up. Yeah, that's definitely something that you can look up examples of. That happens. But I didn't know that that's what was thought there's a picture right now on the screen of the mud floods, and you're seeing the bottom of this whole area exposed, like a whole other structure underneath of it. Just trying to explain the picture that was on the screen, but I thought that was caused by massive flooding. That's when you would talk about that, I always thought you were saying it was caused by flooding. I find it very interesting that that's actually caused by the earth like reclaiming the structure.
Yeah, and we don't really know what caused it. But what another way you can know about the mud flooding is you see all these examples of on the. It's like trying to think how to say this. So the windows are on this right on the street level. So like if there was any flooding, all the water would just go right in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it appears that the street level used to be lower. And so I wish I could talk better about the mud floods.
Right. It's interesting. And like I said, I'm a lot more fascinated now that I realize it's not due to rain.
Yeah, no, it's a weird like seismic activity, like earthquake, weird stuff.
Yeah, that makes it a whole lot more interesting to me to look into. But this is a fascinating subject for me. I've been following, you turned me on to what is that guy's name? Barnabas on YouTube?
Yeah, Barnabas. Barnabas is awesome.
Yeah,
Barnabas Nagy.
I like him and he's real straightforward,
Shout out to Barnabas.
no glitz or glam, just comes right out with all this really interesting history, and he has really good theories, and I find it very interesting, and I was really looking forward to talking to you about it because I knew that you had done a lot of research on it yourself and were pretty well versed. And I thought it would be an interesting episode for the viewers to hear about Tartaria and the possibility that there could be thousands of years of history that we have had hidden from us, whether deliberate or not.
Yeah, it's crazy because all you need to do is look at look at DC, look at the gold rush cities, look at the World's Fairs. That just was obviously not built by settlers with wagons.
Right. It definitely doesn't make sense. I mean, the logistics of it, especially in the times you were saying, because like you said, the U.S. Capitol they're saying was built in 8 years. That seems like a pretty massive structure for settlers with wagons to build in 8 years.
But it's preposterous, in my opinion.
Again, I'm no mason, but I think that that seems a little unrealistic for people with regular basic stone cutting tools and no electricity to have accomplished all of that. And some of these
Yeah, now they
structures,
have to use those like 18-wheeled bulldozers and cranes and stuff. Like,
yeah,
it's really hard to do nowadays, and they have to use crazy to cut that. They use saw blades with diamond tips and then power sprayers to blast the sediment out.
oh, to recreate it, it would
They,
be a huge production.
yeah, it would be almost probably literally impossible.
And they probably wouldn't finish it in 8 years.
Yeah, no way.
So, yeah, I don't understand why people sometimes close themselves off to new information. I think stuff like this is fun. I like exploring these possibilities, and I'm aware that most things around us are part of a mass deception. You know, I'm aware that I don't know everything, so it's fun to explore different things.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. At the very least, it's fun.
Yeah, and I just don't. I think it's a choice in the age of information to stay ignorant. And once you become informed, once you start waking up, you have to do all you can to inform yourself and inform others. And that's what this show's for. That's what the point of this show is for, to make conspiracy something that, first off, people realize that you've been trained to believe that that's something to be ashamed of. It's not. Conspiracies have been around forever. Theories are real. Put the word together, it's still real.
Yeah.
But is there anything you want to
Good.
plug or anything you want to mention or any ways people can get in touch with you, anything like that?
So I'm making a YouTube channel. It's going to be for magic streaming and conspiracy stuff.
Right
Find
on.
the Pantheist Pope on YouTube. That's my channel.
The Pantheist Pope?
The Pantheist Pope. Yeah, one word.
Right on.
And then also, yeah, shout out to Barnabas Nagy. Check out Barnabas Nagy. He's
Definitely.
awesome. And then shout out to the New Earth channel and the John Levi channel. Are all my big inspirations on this stuff.
Right on. Well, thank you, Tyler, for coming on and talking to us about Tartaria and fake history. And hopefully we can have you on again at a different time to talk about maybe more of this or something different.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea.
Well, I appreciate your time and thanks for joining us. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Conspiracy Theories and Chill, and our special guest was Tyler Klattenhoff. We'll see you guys next time on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in.